Okay, here we are at Will Marin's museum called God's World Exploration Station. And behind me here, you see his really fancy museum here off of Highway 97. And we're about 7 miles southeast of Leavenworth and about, 25, 30 miles north of Cle Elum. And Will is going to give us a tour of all of his artifacts, things that he's found around here, around Blewett Pass, Chelan, and Kittitas County that supports a universal flood. Also, he's going to be showing us some other things that are not from around here. All right, Will, what do we got here? What is this big object here?
This is the size of one vertebra from one of the largest dinosaurs ever found. This is a replica of one vertebra from an Argentinosaur, a long-necked dinosaur found in Argentina. It's 5.5 feet tall. This is one vertebra from a fossil crocodile that was about 12 feet long. You know, this was one big lizard. Now, a third of the long-necked dinosaur's length was its head and neck. More than 1/3 of their length was typically their tail. So their body was less than 1/3 of their total length. One reason it's so big is to support the muscles. This is from the back area that would reach out into the neck. This dinosaur was 130 or 140 feet long, and the longest blue whale we know of was 110 feet. Now this dinosaur would have been 20 or 30 feet longer than the biggest blue whale, but the blue whale would have weighed more.
Now you say that this is a vertebrae from the Argentinosaurs?
Yes.
So I'm to take it that this was found near Argentina, or in Argentina.
Argentina.
And now where is that at? Is that down in South
Still
America?
in Argentina. The real one.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean Argentina. Now where is that at for our viewers to make?
Oh.
Is that down in South America?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's a huge vertebrae.
That's a huge vertebra.
I mean, look, I'm about 5'6".
So it's the same height as you.
And you know, you hold up that. Now, what's this vertebrae from right here?
From a fossil crocodile that was about 12 feet long.
Okay, so that's a crocodile. A human vertebrae is smaller than that. And here we've got this giant dinosaur vertebrae. I mean, how big were those dinosaurs that you just mentioned? How long was it again, they figure?
130 or 140 feet long.
130 to 140 feet long.
Right.
Okay, so a football field is 100 yards, and that's 300 feet.
So this is almost half of a football field.
Almost half of a football field. That's amazing.
Right.
Okay, well, you got more things to show us, so we'll go over there. Okay, so now we're in another part of your museum outdoors. What is this big thing?
This is the size of one vertebra from the largest dinosaur I know of, an Amphicoelus, a different long-necked dinosaur that would have been 185 to 200 feet long. We've only found parts of 2 of these dinosaurs. I know that one of them was in Colorado, and this dinosaur would have been 1.5 times as long as the biggest blue whale found, and it would have been as heavy or heavier. Plus, if we've only found parts of 2 of these dinosaurs, it's really unlikely that we found the biggest one. So they probably got more than 200 feet long.
So you're saying this was found in Colorado?
Yes.
This dinosaur?
Right.
Can you tell us about where in Colorado, or is that kind of like top secret?
Now, I'm not sure if it was Cope or Marsh and which one of them it was, but one of those men that found a lot of the famous dinosaurs we've started out with during the dinosaur wars.
Right, Marsh. I remember reading about him. So this goes back to how early? When they were finding these big dinosaurs in Colorado, when Marsh was finding them.
Early 1900s.
Early 1900s.
I know part of it was during the Depression. And they also found a good portion of one of the leg bones. I forget if it was a femur or a humerus. And I've seen a photograph of that bone. And it's called Amphicoelus fragilis, I believe, because the fossil bone was very fragile, and we don't know the location of either the vertebra or the leg bone that were found. But they were well documented, and there, like I say, there was at least a photograph taken of the leg bone that I've seen myself.
Okay, that's cool. Wow. All right, so so you're saying that this dinosaur had to have been around 180 feet to 200 feet long.
Right.
And so you have a football field marked out here, don't you?
Well, I've got something else marked out.
Okay.
The length of Noah's Ark.
Oh.
And the length of this longest dinosaur.
Yeah.
But we're gonna have to shift positions for that.
Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna do all that. Okay.
So I've got some bison treats here. They are Bison Tricky. She loves apple, and so do the goats. And the goats are like the ambassadors. They help Tricky feel comfortable. Here. So 60 to 100 million buffalo were killed on the American plains in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, over a 40-year period. In places the prairie was littered with their bones. Now, in some areas there were bone collectors who would pick up the bones to use to give to farmers for fertilizer. But in many areas they were never picked up. Now, how come the prairie isn't full of bison fossils right now? Those bones deteriorated. The bone left on the surface or just buried in topsoil will decay. Mice and insects, drying and moisture, even without freezing weather. We'll show you inside that it takes really rapid burial in mineral-rich sediment for a fossil to form.
Okay, so you have it all set up to show us how long Noah's Ark was. So explain that to us.
If one end of Noah's Ark was where this post is, at a minimum, based on a standard cubit, the other end would be at the base of the hill there, 450 feet away, which is tough to picture. That's 1.5 football fields. Now that largest dinosaur, the Amphicoelus, if its nose was here, its tail would be where that dark red post is. So as adults, those giant long-necked dinosaurs would fill up the ark pretty quick. Now, you'll recall that God sent the animals to Noah. Noah and his family didn't have to go out and catch them. And God probably sent young long-necked dinosaurs, and a young long-necked dinosaur would have been the size of a 2 or 3 foot iguana. You could hold it like a cat. And God didn't send by species, He sent by kind. So of all the elephant mammoth type, just one male and one female. Of all the long-necked dinosaurs, one male and one female. Of all the dog wolf type, probably just one male and one female. And of course of the animals we'd call like livestock, 7 of those.
Okay, cool. Now we're going to take a look at the height of Noah's Ark. Okay, Will, this is really amazing because you have this museum pretty much set up to explain Noah's Ark. You know, how tall it was, and then we just saw how long it was.
Right.
So it's kind of amazing how you can compare the height of Noah's Ark to the height of your museum. So tell us more about that.
It would have been 10 feet taller than the ridge of the museum, Noah's Ark. And we have evidence of other enormous handmade wooden ships inside the museum. Most people don't know that there were ancient ships that were approached the size of the Queen Mary, which was the biggest passenger ship at least a few decades ago.
So, Will, how tall was Noah's Ark in cubits?
30 cubits, which would be 45 feet based on a standard cubit. The royal cubit was even longer. So if anything, it'd be taller, not shorter. Or, you know.
Right. So a cubit, from what I've heard, a cubit is like the length from the tip of your finger to your elbow.
And the standard cubit was 18 inches.
18 inches. Now, I'm going to throw in a monkey wrench into all this. We heard about the sons of God and daughters of men. We heard about the giants in the Bible, you know. And we also know about DNA. We know about biology. And, you know, the closer we get to Adam and Eve, the more perfect our bodies were. I mean, the second law of thermodynamics takes over, and pretty soon we have gene depletion.
Right.
So my point is, could it be that people that lived back in Noah's day could have been much taller than we are today? You know, and which would make the cubit a little bit longer, which would make the Noah's Ark much longer. What do you think about that?
I think it's quite possible that they might have averaged a bit taller than we are. But of course, the giants were separate than the majority of the population.
Sure.
And Noah and his family, there's no reason to think they were giants. But
I was just thinking maybe they could have been a little taller than us because they're closer to Adam and Eve.
Right.
You know, and you know, it wasn't until the time of Moses that brothers and sisters couldn't marry, which is really something to think about.
Increase in genetic defects, including birth defects and genetic diseases in our lifetimes.
Right.
And in the last few hundred years. Yeah.
So I just think, you know, you put all this together and you think, well, you know, really, we're not as strong. We're probably not as tall. You know.
Our brains aren't as big.
Yeah, right. We only use
Neanderthals, Cro-Magnon, they were typically had bigger brain capacity and were stronger. And Cro-Magnon was typically taller as well.
Okay, so through time,
and these were people, just like us. They're not ape, you know, part ape and part man. They're not some evolutionary mixed up thing. Right.
They didn't swing from trees. They weren't half man, half ape, or anything like that.
They swung from trees as much as I do. Right.
And so
maybe over a pond.
Right. So in other words, in time, we're not getting stronger. We're not really getting smarter. We're depleting our gene system.
Yeah.
And so so the further you go back, the stronger people were. And, you know, this gets a lot of people confused because, you know, like, what was it? The life expectancy back in the 1800s was around, like, what, 35, 45 years old? Now we can
It does depend on what part of the world.
Okay.
But yes, in a lot of the industrial world, that's true.
Okay. And so people get confused and think, well, then aren't we evolving? Aren't we getting stronger because people are living longer? But there's a lot of other things.
Scientific and technical knowledge, but our brains don't function as well as our ancestors.
Well, I would say the reason why we're living longer, it has nothing to do with evolution. It has to do with our medical system. We're able to live longer because we got all these machines now that can keep us alive longer. We've got more pills, vitamins, you know,
better food year round.
Better food, yes, we got all that. So
clean water.
It's not that we're evolving. We're just, the medical technology is just simply improved and help us to suffer a little longer in our increase of age.
Well, and it can help our kids grow bigger because of the vitamins, you know, and ample food, and less disease, but not as you know, probably approaching like Cro-Magnon, but not quite as much.
Yeah.
I'm talking about physical stature, not brain capacity.
Okay, well, very good. Now we're going to probably go inside of your museum, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Dinosaur fossils here in Washington, and we found footprints of young duck-billed dinosaurs. We've also found footprints of what are probably either iguanodons or these horned dinosaurs, which look like classic dragons.
That is Sticky Moloch. Sticky Moloch. Sticky.
This one is Stygimoloch. This one is Dracorex, but you guys are sharp. And we're not even sure these were different species of dinosaurs. They may have been male and female in different ages of the same dinosaur, or they might have been three similar types of dinosaurs. Good job, guys. And we've also found footprints of a four-toed dinosaur where you can even see the skin impressions on the lower leg. And we don't have a good match for this dinosaur yet. The closest match is an ankylosaur, but an ankylosaur has a longer heel. So this is a different dinosaur. And in with them,
We found a footprint of a roadrunner bird, which has a distinctive X-shaped footprint.
What is this kind of dinosaur?
You mean kind of like
Hang on just a minute.
Okay.
a woodpecker?
Okay, good. So a lot of woodpeckers, many owls, and roadrunner birds are all birds that I'm aware of that have X-shaped alignment of their toes. At least they use their toes that way quite often. Now the roadrunner bird, it flies very well, but it mostly runs, kind of like quail. You know, I don't know if you guys see quail much, but they fly very well. They're normal birds. They're nothing unusual like the Archaeopteryx. And so in with them we have the three types of dinosaurs. We have the bird footprint, and we have many plant fossils. We have the tooth of a mosasaur, which is a Leviathan type ocean dinosaur. That one with the mouth open, that's, yeah, you're looking right at a mosasaur, both of those pictures.
Mosasaurs. It's a mosasaur.
And pliosaurs, they're similar, but we have identified this as a mosasaur tooth. And then somebody else has found fish fossils nearby. So it's land and sea life mixed together. Now,
Okay, so
go ahead.
these footprints you're talking about, what state were they finding these in?
The ones I'm talking about here in Washington State.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow, that's
so
cool.
We're on record, aren't we?
Yeah.
And I'm working with some paleontologists, one at Masters University and one at Liberty University. They've already done a presentation before the American Geologic Society about these footprints and tooth. And we're preparing a scientific journal article as well.
Okay.
We have not made this public knowledge yet, but we found these in 2011. The next year, in 2012, someone with the University of Washington found the broken femur of a carnivorous theropod, like a smaller version of a T-Rex, in the San Juan Islands. So the world was more perfect for life before the world flood. And the Bible and some cultures say that people lived to be several hundred years old before the world flood. And I know of at least several reasons for that, at least 4 reasons. Some animals grow all their life, including reptiles and fish. So if they're healthy and they live to be really old, they're going to be really big. These are the teeth of giant reef sharks. We call them Megalodons. These are real teeth. That's a replica of one of the largest Megalodon teeth ever found. And that Megalodon would have been 1.5 times as long as the museum building. And they could swallow a person whole without chewing at all. And then some other creatures. Now most things that we find fossils of aren't really bigger than today, but there are a number of things that are bigger. Some things grew bigger at parts of their life, but then they stopped growing. They didn't keep growing all their life. This is the skull of a large beaver from today and half the lower jaw of a giant beaver from the past. And this is part of the...
So the dark one is the giant beaver.
Yes, the lower, half of the lower jaw of a giant beaver. This is part of the jaw of a giant cow from Mongolia. And that's just part way up the jaw. And look at how big that tooth is. In Europe, they were called a rock, and they're in cave paintings. This is the size of the largest vulture that's alive today. It's the Andean king condor. And there's a dead animal here, and it's chasing away a wolf because it wants to eat the dead animal. That's a tough bird that can chase away a wolf. Mark, I'm afraid you're at a disadvantage, but this is the size of an even larger condor that died out just about 300 years ago that also lived in the Andes. That was at the Los Angeles Museum of Natural History.
What's this one?
And that's are you talking about this one here? This is the size of an even larger bird found in South Carolina. Now, it didn't weigh as much as the Andean king condor, but it had a longer wingspan. And this is the present, well, I called that an Andean king condor. That would be wrong. This is an Andean king condor compared with it. This was the giant condor of the past. Okay, I'm gonna head over here now. Oh, the grasshopper. Okay, now she's looking at a grasshopper that's like 6.5 inches long. Now that's not a fossil. Most of the insects we find fossils of, and I'll show you a few, are normal size. Right now, some of the grasshoppers in Bolivia are 19 inches long. And I've seen one grasshopper in Southern California that was 10 to 12 inches long. And, but most of the grasshoppers in Bolivia and Southern California are normal size. But there are, well, most of the insects we find fossils of are normal size. There is a 6-foot long centipede we found, and a huge spider, and dragonflies that had at least a 30-inch wingspan. And big cockroaches too. Some of the insects did get huge in the past. This is a huge ship built by the Roman Emperor Caligula that was unearthed in Italy in 1932. My understanding is it burned during World War II. I'm not sure on that though. But it was, and he built 2 of them. He had a palace, a floating palace on one of them. But it was as wide as Noah's Ark. It wasn't nearly as tall. It was 3/5 the length. So a little more than half the length of Noah's Ark. And there was a fleet of 60 huge handmade wooden ships built by a Chinese emperor in the 1400s AD. And 10 of them were the size of Noah's Ark, and the others were about half the size. They sailed all around the Indian Ocean to Indonesia and Africa and India, bringing treasures back to China. And there was one immense Egyptian warship that approached the size of Noah's Ark. These are way bigger than the Mayflower, the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria, or most ancient ships. Most people don't know there were these huge ancient ships, but there were. Now, you know that there were 2 sources of water for the world flood. The Bible says that there was like hurricane rain worldwide, but it says that all the fountains of the great deep burst forth. These were huge underwater geysers. This is a small portion of the remnant of an extinct geyser field in what's now the desert of Bulgaria. And this is just a small part of it. The tubes inside these geyser spouts are 3 and 3.5 feet in diameter. Enormous amounts of water came out here. It was hot, mineral-rich water. The shape of these geyser spouts is not like at Yellowstone. It's the shape of geysers that form in the oceans today. And when that hot, mineral-rich water mixed with the floodwaters, sometimes it caused mineral precipitate, kind of like mineral crystals, to form in the water. So one moment, what's this here?
That is
A sleeping fish. No. That is an ichthyosaur. It looks like a porpoise or a dolphin, but it's actually a reptile. And some ichthyosaurs got huge, 60 feet long. But there's a number of really impressive fossils of fish and ichthyosaurs buried in the process of giving birth. And they're impressive to everyone. But this had to do with the trauma of getting buried alive. And most people don't realize that. And it had to do with these eruptions of the fountains of the deep. And all the big limestone deposits in the world, these are limestone fossils here. Fossils of plants and animals mixed together. What's this right here?
That is
A bone. Looks like maybe you were at Kentucky Fried Chicken and threw one of your bones away. It's actually from a young crocodile. But see, that bone's in really good shape. It was rapidly buried. The body was torn apart, but the bone didn't deteriorate at all. You know, it's really nice bone.
It's cracked.
It is cracked a little bit. That's not uncommon. Here's some more limestone with bones in it.
Well,
Can you see any bones there?
Here.
Well, now a lot of these are shells, but yes, there are at least 3 bones, actually part of another one there. Yeah, and plant fossils, and
you know, wood and...
That's a ginormous ammonite shell.
Okay, what's an ammonite?
An ammonite is a crustacean that lived long ago, and it was like squid.
Right, it was like a squid with a shell. I'm going to correct one thing. Crustacean would be like crabs and lobsters and shrimp. This would be a mollusk. So it'd be like snails and clams, that group. But this would be a sea snail shell, and that would be a sea snail shell. But those two small coiled ones and the big one, these are ammonite shells, which are very similar to where I've built the head of the biggest dinosaur out front, which I need to repair. At a dinosaur theme park in Poland, they built the whole dinosaur, and these are people walking around the base of it, not just kids. These were huge animals. Sorry it's not brighter, it looks like a cloud's going over too. And you guys are familiar with the passage about Behemoth at the end of the book of Job. And we've also got information about Leviathan. And I'm going to talk just a moment about this. So this is a footprint of a young long-necked dinosaur. Some of the footprints of long-necked dinosaurs I've found in Texas are 5 feet across. This guy would have had footprints 8 or 9 feet across. They would go from, you know, if he had his foot resting upwards, it would go from the floor to the ceiling. Not up there, but of that ceiling there. And Behemoth, of course, God's talking to Job, which was made along with mankind, and Job knows about him, feeds on grass like an ox. God calls him, he moves his tail like a cedar. The cedar they knew was a cedar of Lebanon. They got 10 and 12 feet in diameter. So it's this plant-eating animal with an enormous tail, and God calls it chief, first, largest among his works. And he's not mean either. Surely the hills yield food for him. The wild animals play there. So Behemoth goes up in the hills and grazes, and other animals can graze near him. He's not aggressive. Now Leviathan is terrifying. He's not nearly as big, but he's one of the most terrifying creatures that's probably the most that's ever been made, that's ever existed. And you have to look at the passage, because while Behemoth is only used about literal animals, sometimes Leviathan, like in one of the Psalms, is talking about a literal animal. But other places, it's making reference to Satan. And so is the word dragon, because these were such unpleasant, mean, ill-tempered creatures. Now this is one of the likely candidates for Leviathan, a mosasaur. They even had teeth on the roof of their mouth near their throats. They had teeth 12 inches long that were sharp, and lots of them, as you can see.
As long as a banana?
Say that?
As long as a banana?
Longer than most bananas. 1.5 times the size of most bananas.
Longer
Or a
than
lot of
T-Rex teeth.
Longer than T-Rex teeth. While the largest dinosaur, that Amphicoelus, at 185 feet, he had an 8 or 9 foot head. Leviathan, at only 60 feet, would have a 12 foot long head. They had the strongest closing power in their jaws of any creature that's ever lived. 33,000 pounds per square inch. My nail gun shoots at 120 pounds per square inch. So it's now, do you guys know what these are?
I think I've heard of that one. Isn't that an electric sleeper ray?
I'm thinking of it, you know more than I do. I know it's an electric ray, but I didn't know that middle part. Good job.
Other ones, there's a couple of eels.
Giant salamander.
No,
Electric
well, they
eel.
look like salamanders, but these are actually, these are electric eels as well. There's at least 3 varieties of electric eel that all live in South America.
Those are giant.
They can produce an 800 volt shock. Some of them. And they, even the ones that don't produce nearly that much shock, can kill a horse or a man or a cow.
The electric rays, I'm not sure the maximum. They can produce a 200 volt shock.
On the
Electric.
TV, it said they could do a 3200 shock on the sleeper ray.
Say it again.
On the electric sleeper ray, on the TV, it said that it had a 3200 volts.
Don't believe everything in here,
Yeah. I think something must be a little confused there, or I'm way off.
Or was it 30?
But either way, it's a lot. It's a lot of voltage, enough to kill some of the animals that they eat, some of the fish that they eat. Now this is an electric catfish. They live in some of the rivers in Africa, and they can produce at least a 400 volt shock.
Oh my God.
Now, so these are branch fossils from in the road cut kind of near Safeway there in Leavenworth. These are palm fossils, and there's maples and horse chestnuts and alders and other plants found mixed together up Blewett Pass in many of the layers. And this is from near the road cut in Kashmir, leaves and branches. Lots out front here. This is from Issaquah, a nice alder leaf. This is wood up on Chinook Pass. This is from here in the Wenatchee Valley. Fine-grained pink sandstone with leaf fossils in it. Fine-grained buff-colored sandstone. Medium-grained. These would be coarse-grained. And rocks being carried along with it. Greenish, different colors of rock.
So this would be like a mud flow right here.
It could be sand or mud, either way, but it was in water.
It's water-carrying dirt.
Yes.
Yeah, water-carrying dirt, creating mud. And so this is evidence of catastrophism.
Right.
And here
And rapid burial.
Right, rapid burial.
And these ones we wouldn't even call sandstone. They'd be siltstone or clay marl.
Sure.
And this one as well. Some of the fossils, but we're trying to show that in all the layers, not just some of the layers, there's this really rapid burial where leaves and branches were preserved.
Right, and then we have a variety of leaves and branches. In fact,
Right.
you have fossils here in your museum that should be in the tropics that we're finding here in the mountains.
Right. Some are like, yes. I mean, the world, there were no polar areas that we know of before the world flood. There were no deserts. The world was all either tropical or temperate. And we find a mixture of those plants in the rock layers here.
Right. Okay, Will, thank you so much for the tour of your museum. I really appreciated all the evidence that you brought out about how the Kittitas, Chelan, Blewett Pass area gives us evidence of a universal flood, and about dinosaurs in the Bible, you know, and how science goes along with the Bible. You know, you can't understand science unless you understand the Bible, the biblical side of it. If you don't bring the Bible into it, then you leave gaps. But when you bring the Bible into science, it fills in all the gaps. Then all of a sudden, now everything is understandable.
Yes.
You know, there's no depth, there's no interest at all, there's no fascination. It just kind of dumbs down science when you speak in terms of biological evolution in millions of years. You know?
It's false.
Yeah.
Yeah,
in
the
fact,
evidence doesn't point that
right. And if you believe in an old Earth, an old universe, then you have no good solid answer for why we suffer as human beings, why nature is suffering, why things are getting older, and what to do about it.
Yeah.
You know?
Thankfully, Christ didn't have to die.
Right.
Because death is a result of sin, is a consequence of sin. And so when he died, he could die for our sins.
Right. Yes. Yep. You know, if you're a believer and you're listening to this, this is not a personality issue. This is not like where, well, you like red, I like blue. No, if you're a believer, you're supposed to be interested in this kind of stuff. This is not something that you really have a choice in. I mean, because all of this scientific evidence has a lot to do with our life and how we live our life every day. Because we're talking about the book of beginnings. We're talking about how sin came into this world and how death came into this world. It was sin that brought death into this world. You bring the Bible and the science together, then all of a sudden everything then starts to make sense. And that's why, if you're a believer, you have to be interested in this subject. This is amazing. It's inspiring. It should inspire you to love the Bible all that much more, and science, because the Bible and science go together.